welcome back to RC Icons. So today's RC icon is none other than the Dynablaster. So the Dynablaster was kit number 58123 from Tamiya, so their 123rd RC car, released August 24th, 1993. And the kit ran till roughly 1999, so for about 6 years. So the Dynablaster is a kit that I've been anxious to build just because it's the only kit that was offered other than the Dynastorm on the Dynastorm chassis. So we know the Dynastorm as being such an iconic two-wheel drive buggy that for me, I want to see what the differences are between the Dynastorm and the Dynablaster. I know it shares the chassis, but I don't think there's a whole lot other than that that's the same. Obviously the gearbox is probably the same where it shares the chassis, but the Dynastorm came with the Teflon sleeved blue shocks that everybody knows and loves, whereas the Dynablaster came with the CVA 2s. So definitely a lower grade chassis and setup. The Dynastorm was obviously set up for racing, where the Dynablaster I think was more set up for backyard fun. So it's more of a stadium truck. I believe it shares the same tires front and rear as the Stadium Blitzer, but it definitely has that iconic look with the metallic red and yellow paint job, and then the the decal set. And it's actually one of the few kits that Tamiya actually produced that did not come with any motor whatsoever. No motor at all, not even a standard silver can. So I'll bring the camera over so that we can take a look at this kit and its presentation, and then we're going to get started on building it. We'll get the chassis built in this episode, and then we'll do a part 2 where we finish off the body. So let me get the camera closer so that we can take a look at the presentation before we start cutting into the blister packs. Alright, so now that I got you in a better angle, so there's our box art. Absolutely gorgeous as always. Love it. So there it shows the pink Ecto Power motor. Your Dynablaster. Your Dynablaster chassis. Must have side guards that go on like the Dynablaster. I mean Dynastorm. And then on the other side it shows your hop-up options. So the CPR unit. And then obviously the Ecto Power. And then there's your short high caps, and then your sleeved high caps. So I've actually got a few sets of vintage short high caps, so I might put a set of those on this car as we're building it. And then this would be your presentation of the kit. So not a huge blister pack. You got to remember this is 1993. So about that time is when the blister packs were starting to get smaller and smaller. So CVAs or universals in the front, the back. Can't speak today. So it's got your original CVAs, and then it does have your stabilizer rod. Tool for ball diff. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure we'll find out. And then so some of Tamiya's kits, Tamiya's kits came where the body was actually stapled onto another insert. So that's pretty cool. All the plastics in the chassis and everything is all stapled underneath the body. Just getting worried here for a second. Couldn't see the decals or the manual. So we've got some chrome decals in the back. We've got window masks. And then we've got our Dynablaster sticker sheet. I've actually got the Dynablaster body kit as well. I had bought it before I had gotten kits, only because the kits were so rare I didn't know if I would ever land one, and then I was lucky enough I landed 2. So the Dynablaster body set that I have, I'm actually going to use to restore a Stadium Thunder. So I've got a Stadium Thunder that's built that needs restoration, but I can't find a body kit for it. So I have an original decal set for the Stadium Thunder, but I don't have a body. So I'm actually going to use the body out of the Dynablaster body kit to restore the Stadium Thunder, and then that truck is probably going to become a giveaway truck because I have a new in-box Stadium Thunder that I'm going to build. So I don't really need the second one. And that box isn't a blister pack box, so it's not one that I would keep as part of my new in-box collection. So here's our manual. So there's that ball diff tool. So you must do that tool for ball diff, I'm not sure. Hold diff joints in position using the tool as shown, and then tighten the cap screw. So yeah, you must use that, and then you tighten the cap screw to adjust that ball diff. So it'll be interesting when we start putting this together. It looks like we start with the front end, and then the ball diff goes together. No, it's actually the rear end, and then the front end is separate. I've actually got a couple of carbon chassis for Dynastorm. And I've got both of them from Fiberlight. I've got the narrow and the regular one. So I could potentially use the wide chassis or the normal chassis on this truck if I wanted to. Because the other one's going to get used to do a 211 tribute. So that's something to think about. I mean, I'm about to start this build, but that just kind of came to me now. I don't know. I guess it's a truck. But yeah, I guess we could potentially use that chassis. So yeah, let me get this thing opened up and we'll start the build. So as I get started here on step 1, you can see we're putting the rear arms together with the mounts, and then step 2, it just pins together with C-clips on both sides of these mounts here. And then step 2 is going to be actually mounting the arms to the rear deck FRP chassis plate. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together and get it mounted to the rear deck, and then I'll show you that real quick before I start assembling the ball diff. Alright, now that I have you back, so steps 1 and 2, like I was showing you before, the rear arm assembly onto the FRP chassis plate, rear plate, all of that is done. So there's just 2 pins with this strengthening bar. Plastic just gets screwed on from underneath. And then there's a couple of mounts here that are, I'm assuming, for shocks or something. We'll find out more later. And then the next step is assembling the ball diff. So we have to assemble the whole ball diff, and then we have to assemble the gear case. And then we're going to get into actually putting the rear gear case together, and then it's immediately into the slipper clutch. So let me start getting some of this taken care of, and then obviously it's mounting that whole assembly onto that rear deck. So let me get the ball diff made, and I'll get to a certain point here, and I'll bring you back when I have something to show you. Alright, I'm probably going to regret trying to do this on camera. So steps 6 and 7, we're just putting the diff in the gearbox. Thing is butter smooth. And the diff is butter smooth. And then the motor plate and the motor plate brace. So the next step is actually assembling the slipper with the spur and everything else. So I'm going to attempt to do this on camera. It's probably a bad idea, but whatever. I've done dumber things. So the spur goes on first. Then there's a washer, which doesn't really make sense because it's huge, but it seems to fit right in there. Then there's a pressure plate, It's going to be fun to get lined up. Pick tool. Yeah, so there's a pressure plate. Then there's a friction pad. It goes on. And that's going to get lined up. Does it? No, it doesn't. It's just round. Then there's another pressure plate. There's another friction pad. And there's another pressure plate. And there's another friction pad. And then there's another pressure plate. So 3 friction pads sandwiched between 4 pressure plates. And the pressure plates are locked on to the shaft, but the obviously the pads aren't, so the pads can slip. So that's all of that sandwiched together and locked on. And then there's top hat. And that needs grease. And then this end cap goes on. And then 3 screws, which should all be Loctited. So let me get one in. Doesn't say to Loctite them, but like I just said in the last segment, if it's a screw going into aluminum, I always Loctite them. And I always use Loctite blue regardless of what Tamiya gives you in the kit, because it'll hold the screw, but you can absolutely get it out if you need to. So that's one. That's 2. I'm going to take my first one out that I used to hold the cap in. Get that one Loctited. That's 3. So that's all set. So now it's asking for a plastic washer to go in, or they call it a bearing, but it's like a spacer really. Then there's a top hat, spring, top hat, nut. And it's saying to tighten it just to the point to where the thread shows, so I'll show you here in a second. Of course it's going to slip, so... Oh, you got to put the diff lock in. Come on. So that's about as far as it's showing. So if you look, you can see just barely the tip of the screw sticking out of that nut. Try to put it at the whiteboard. See just the tip sticking up? If you look in the book, right here, it shows you just the tip sticking up. So it's as tight and as shown. So that's what I did. We'll start there. So at this point, the rear gearbox is 100% done. Feels awesome. Next step, step 9, is going to be actually mounting it to that rear plate with the rear arms that we built before. And then it looks like we're going to start building the rear damper stay and top arms. So let me get this mounted up and start getting some of this pre-assembled, and then I'll bring you back so that you can see it. And then it's mounting that to the chassis. So basically we're wrapping up the rear end right now in the next few steps. And we are going to get a motor mounted in this because I do want to run it. I've got an old Stadium Thunder body that I might put on it, and then we'll probably just tape the bottom of the chassis. But I do want to get some of these run. I've gotten a lot in the comments. Are you going to run these cars? Are you going to run these cars? So the intention of these cars is my collection, first and foremost. With that being said, I get it. I totally understand. You watch these cars being built and get restored, and you want to see them run. So certain cars I'll do my best to run and protect, and I'm going to hope for the best. I'm not going to beat the living piss out of them. I'll be honest. It's not what I'm about. But I'll take it to a ball field or something, and I'll show you what it's meant for. I've got new tires. They came with the kit, and I've got another set of new tires spare. So, yeah, we can run it. We'll figure something out, and we'll get it run, and we'll try to protect it the best we can. It'll have a Stadium Thunder body on it, but at least you'll see that chassis run. So yeah, let's keep moving forward here, and like I said, I'll bring you back when I have something to show you. But we're probably going to put a pink Acto Power motor in here. I've got a couple of them spare. So if we're going to run it, let's throw the pink one in. That's what it was meant for. So let me get it finished up here, or get something to show you, and I'll bring you right back. All right, made some headway here. So when I last left you, we had just finished a slipper clutch. So step 9 is mounting that whole rear gearbox assembly to the main plate, along with some top deck supports, and then the rear motor guard. And then step 10 is getting the rear damper stay assembled. It's a 2-piece, and then the upper arms, rear upper arms. So here it is, mounted to the FRP rear chassis plate. There's your motor guard in the back, right? So the motor will go in there. So that was step 9, and then step 10 was assembling the rear damper stay, a couple arms. So moving on to step 11, we're going to mount the damper stay and the arms to the actual chassis. And then step 12 will be getting the rear uprights assembled with these beautiful UJs that are actually still in the blister pack. So we'll get those cut out. We'll get through 11 and 12, and probably 13 as well, just because it brings the rear end together. And then step 14 will be mounting the motor. So I'll have to dig out one of my pink motors, and then it's just the MDC gearbox cover, multi-disc control. Hence the 3 pressure plates, or 3 friction plates and 4 pressure plates, multi-disc. Now you know what MDC stands for. So yeah, let's get that wrapped up, and then we'll show you that, and then it'll start on the front end. Alright, so in steps 11, 12, and 13, like I said, it was mounting the rear damper stay to the assembly, and then it was making up the axles, the UJs, with the rear uprights. So all of that's assembled. Absolutely beautiful. We're up to step 14 now, where we need to mount the motor. So I most of my vintage motors, if you've seen my collection videos, are behind glass. But I had a box of leftovers that I didn't put behind glass. I've got a bunch of new BZ motors that are brand new in the box, but I knew I had a pink one in here that was in the box. This one's a little bit more beat up. The other one is in the glass. It's brand new. So I broke it out. The motor itself has some dinging on it. You know, it was obviously used. I didn't realize it had an extra rotor in that box, so that's cool. And then this is the box of extra motors. I forgot that these were even in here. There's a almost mint Technogold sitting in here. There's a beat up Technogold sitting in here. There was a Dynarun sitting in here. There's a Dynatech sitting in here. I actually have a new unboxed one on its way. It was the last one I was missing. There's a lightly tuned one sitting in here. And then, look at this. Look at this. So in my egress video, I gave away a Dynatech O2H. And I've got a brand new one in box in the cabinet. And I've got one out of the box on a motor stand. Dynatech O2Hs. I must have went on a kick at one point when I first started collecting. That one right there is absolutely brand new. Brand spanking new. Not a mark of rust or anything on that one. Some of these are in really good shape. That one's in really good shape. This one's got a little bit of marks deep down inside, but this one's absolutely mint too. This one's got a little bit of rust on it here and there. But yeah, just some RC goodness. And then this one, I think I bought this whole box of Parma motors. It was $25. So there's a Yokomo modified. There's a B&R Bullet. That's an old motor. Here's a K modified Parma. There's a B&R Motorworks. And another B&R Sportsman. So just a bunch of old vintage motors. I love looking at this stuff. Sometimes I forget what I've got in my closet. It's just a ton of stuff in there. So we're going to use this pink Acto Power. I got it hooked up here to this is just a 2S battery. My new Noble Pro actually holds a phone, so if you want to film, which obviously I plan on doing. So let's see, let's turn this on. Whoa, hold on to it, Keith. So yeah, that motor is working good. So yeah, this is the one we're going to throw in. I didn't look at it inside. I didn't open it up and look at the brushes or anything. I don't plan on running it too much. It looks like the timing is set right in just a little bit ahead of center. Yeah, sounds awesome. So yeah, this is the motor of choice for this car. We're going to run this baby, so we might as well put the right motor in it. So let me get the rest of this stuff out of the way. I'm going to get the motor mounted in it, and then I'll get the motor mounted in it, and then I'll bring you back just to see it real quick, and we're going to start the front end. Alright, we got there in the end. We got the multi-disc control sticker on the gear cover. Gear cover's on. The slipper clutch access is put together. The pink motor is in, although you can't really read any of it anywhere. And the mesh is absolutely beautiful. So rear end is done. We're going to put that to the side. We're going to move on. We're on step 15. We're going to start putting together the front shock tower and the front upper arms. And then front lower arms and suspension pins. So let me get some of this assembled, then it's the steering knuckles, and then it all gets put together. So let me get some of this assembled and I'll bring you right back. I know the video's getting long, so I'll try to push through here. Alright, so that gets us through step 18. So that's the front end. Basically put together, ready to be mounted on the chassis. It's got all the shock mounts on it already. There's another suspension brace just like on the back. So I'll show you what I did real quick. I know the video's starting to get a little bit long, so yeah, I assembled the front shock tower first here, and then I made the two upper arms, and then it has you mount the lower arms onto the shock tower. It's just C-clips, standard stuff. Then it had me make the front hubs, so two-piece hub just like normal. And then it had you pin the hubs onto the lower arms and connect the upper arms. So the next step is making the CVA shocks, which I'll do off camera because that's no big deal. And if you've seen one, you've seen 100. And then you actually get the shocks mounted front and rear. And then we're finally going to get everything bolted up to the main chassis deck. So the very last step is essentially bolting everything to the chassis. I mean, we're on whatever it is here, step 20 or so. We're on step 19 and we haven't touched the chassis yet. So we're getting there. So let me get the shocks built and I'll get them put on to, looks like we do the rear first and then we do the front, and then I'll bring you back just before we start mounting everything to the chassis. Once the shocks are built and they're on the front and rear bulkheads, all that's left is mounting them to the chassis and then putting on the bumper and steering arms. Other than that, it's body pins and electronics, and we already have the motor in, so, and the electronics are already set up. I mean, the receiver's already bound too, so that's going to be pretty simple. So let me get the shocks built and on, and I'll bring you right back. Alright, so shocks are built. Feel great. That's the rear. That's the front. Pretty simple. The front's got a spacer and two O-rings on the inside. And then the rear has a bunch of spacing sleeves for the springs. The front's got two small ones. The rear has two big ones and then a narrow one. So getting to step 27 is actually mounting the rear finally to the chassis. So I want to do this real quick on camera. So there's 4 tapered head screws for the FRP plate. This has been an epic build. I was actually just emailing Glenn. Glenn is down with COVID right now, so in real time, it's June 23rd, and Glenn's got a lot going on right now at the house. Not to get into his personal business, but he's extremely busy, as is Steph, and yeah, they both just got whacked with COVID, so he's a little down and out, but they're doing okay, so that's the most important thing. And then there's 2 at the top here, but I was telling them, I'm like, I just finished in real time, I just finished a chassis for the Optima Mid Custom Special, and that build was obviously off the hook. And I've been messing around the last few days trying to get custom colors kind of sprayed out on test polycarbonate pieces, because I really want to get the box art color, and there is no real color for it. So there's your rear end on. So now this thing's actually starting to look like something. So moving on to step 28, looks like all the steering mess first, and then the bumper, which is kind of unfortunate because I really wanted to get this thing looking like a chassis before I stopped for the day. But I just don't have the willpower or the time right now to get all of this mess out and get that all built. So I'll pick it up again tomorrow. For you, it'll be instantaneous, but I'll pick it up again tomorrow. But yeah, I was telling Glenn the Optima Mid Custom Special build was off the hook. I'll show it to you actually, so you'll probably see this car before you see this car in real time. But so that's it, ready to paint. And that car, that was an awesome car to build. So this car should be in the videos, on the channel first, and then the Dynablaster is superseding it. But yeah, 2 epic builds back to back. I did a bunch of restorations at the beginning. I did the Brat, I did the Egress giveaway car, then I did the Ninja. So I wanted to get into some new unbox builds for a bit to change it up. And I couldn't have picked 2 better ones. I mean, I guess I could have. I've got a lot of kits, but the 2 I picked have been exceptional so far. So that's going to do it for right now. Like I said, it'll be instantaneous for you, but I'm going to pick this up tomorrow and we'll finish off this chassis, and then I'll have a couple of bodies to get done here. So I'll bring you back here in just a second. Alright, so it's a new day. I left off yesterday, and I had the rear bulkhead was mounted to the chassis, but I didn't have any energy left to start messing with steering and doing that kind of stuff. So off camera, I just made up the steering arms and the steering assembly. 4 ball bearings in there. If I didn't say it before, this kit comes with like 6 bearings, but you figure those are all the bushes that I've replaced with bearings. So even being a high-end truck, it still comes with brass bushes. So step 28 was making up the steering assembly. Step 29 was getting that in the front bumper mounted. Step 30, getting the front end assembly mounted. So I'm going to do that right now. And then we're going to move on to electrics. So the servo is going to have to go in, which I actually will do a servo in this car because we're going to run it. So I'll get the servo in, and then there's a cover that protects it. And then it's really just the body mounts and the anti-sway bar in the back that's left. So this looks pretty straightforward. So it's got 2 of these press nuts. I don't know if you've ever seen them. You see them on the Astute. Some of the older 2-wheel drive cars, it's like a squash nut. Let's see if I can get it in focus. It's like a squash nut. So it goes down into a hole like that. And it's got little teeth on it that will grip it. So the squash nuts are for the front. Get those out of the way. Get that in place. See if we can get this done real quick on camera. One, It's 2. It's 3. It's 4. We'll get our steering arms put on here. Steering arms are on. Feels good. Front end feels good. We just need that top deck to stiffen it up. Look, if you look at it, you can see how much this angles backwards. That front suspension. It's got a real hard kick up in the front of this chassis. So like that's level. Let's see if I can get an angle on it for you. And the shocks actually go backwards. The suspension feels great. So that's essentially the chassis. So we're going to move forward now. I'm going to move forward off camera and get the servo in. Get the top deck on. Anti-sway bar and some body posts. Wheels and tires. And then we're going to get into the body, which will be a separate video. This body's a fun one. It's not terrible, but the roll bars can be a pain to paint. It's just a lot of masking. So let me move forward. I'm pretty much going to wrap the truck up, I think. And then I'll bring you back for a close-up look. And then we'll do a closing. So let me get the truck finished up. Well, where do I start? So I left you an hour and a half ago. An hour and a half ago. Started with the servo. I got it put together. I used one of my standard 20 kilo whatevers, no name brands, digital servo all metal case. Get the whole thing put together. Try it with my neutralizer. Steering's working fine. Get everything adjusted. Go to put the top plate on, and it was fighting me the whole time. Now it's got this raised section here for the servo arm to travel it, and it kept binding up. And I'm looking at the servo, and the servo height itself with the mounts does not change from any servo ever produced, like even back in 1996. Try to get the top on, it's binding. Went to change the actual arm to the shorter arm. So the one that's in there is a little bit higher. The shorter arm, the holes are smaller diameter than the ball socket shaft that's used. So I was like, it just doesn't make sense. So I put the anti-roll bar in, powered it up again. I'm trying to see up in here to see why it's binding, and basically I finally figured it out. So the distance from the top of the servo where the mount is to where the actual horn is, see how this servo's got a really big top hat or top cap? It was throwing the arm so far this way that it was binding right on the edge of the grooved section. So I ended up, took the whole thing back apart, ripped that servo out, and I put a low profile servo in there. And what that did was, it didn't necessarily, I mean, it did give me more room in the back here, but that wasn't what I needed. the top of that servo is shallower, and it brought that whole mechanism back into the center of this raised area instead of it being riding the outside edge and binding. So I finally got that all put back, and putting this together is a pain. This roll bar, the way that it goes in, these two mounts hold the roll bar. It's all up and under. There you go, Keith. All up and underneath the rear, the upper the shock tower, but that's laid back. So you're trying to get back in here and hold nuts, and oh, it's just a disaster. So I'll be honest, I got the body mounts in, I got the anti-roll bars on, everything is finally working the way it's supposed to. What's left on the chassis, I gotta get my ESC and my receiver mounted in here, and then I need to put the wheels and tires on. That's really all that's left, but I'm calling it for this video. I'm just after that, I'm spent, I'm frustrated. I'd rather give this car a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back and I'll get the wheels and tires on it when I'm painting the body, and I'll get the electrics in it when I'm painting the body. So part 2 will be finishing the electrics, getting the wheels and tires on it. The thing feels absolutely awesome. I'm extremely happy with it. I'm just frustrated with it. I'm frustrated with the servo. It has nothing to do with the car. I love the car. The build was epic. It's just modern day electrics in a vintage car, right? It's, if you deal with vintage buggies, we've all been down this road before. And modern servos are, granted, the size of them are the same, but the heights aren't the same. So note to self, I think honestly I'm just going to start buying these low profile servos from now on. I don't need full height servos. They're still 20 kilogram. There's plenty of power in them, so it's not a matter of power. It's, you know, these servos are just too tall for vintage cars. You look at a vintage servo, and that cap sits at least 5 mil shorter. At least 5 mil shorter, you know, and that height can be a problem and start throwing arms in the wrong spot. It had my steering all messed up. I'm adjusting rods. I basically fiddled with the front end of this car to get that servo straight for half an hour, and then go to put the top plate on, and it doesn't work. So now rip that servo out, put a new servo in, redo all the arms that I just spent half an hour screwing around with. It's just like, I'm done. Had it. So let me clean up my bench. I'll bring you back for closing, and then we'll see this car again in part 2, where we'll paint the body, we'll finish off the electrics, and we are going to do tire writing in part 2. You get super gripper up here, and then there's some light numbers down here. They do give you some tire decals in the kit. I don't know if I'll put them on. I'll probably wait until after the first run, or after the running video, to put them on. They are cool looking. They say Tamiya Racing, right? So those are the tire decals. There's 4 of them. So I'll do the super gripper, and then, you know, maybe I'll do Tamiya Racing on one side or the other, but we'll figure it out. I've also got a bunch of tire decals, so we'll mess with that later. Let me get this cleaned up. I'll bring you back for a closing. So yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. I apologize if I seemed frustrated in the last clip. That's just me being genuine. So, like I said, the build itself was absolutely epic. Loved it. It was, it went together like no other Tamiya that I've built. Where, you know, you're kind of, you don't get to the chassis until the very end. Now, I know a lot of Tamiyas, you build the rear end, you build the front end, and then you kind of bring it all together with the chassis. But this was just so different. I've never built a Dynastorm. I have a couple to build, but I've never built one as of yet. And I've never built a Dynablaster, seen one built, you know, I've never seen one in the flesh. So, yeah, the build itself was absolutely epic. And I can tell from the build that the car, when we run it, is going to be absolutely epic. So, yeah, you know, it just came down to modern day servo just wasn't going to work with this car. So in the end, I went with a low profile servo, and everything lines up perfect. And I actually just bought, after the last clip, this is the next day, so I couldn't even film. I was just exhausted yesterday when I finished messing around with this thing 3 times. Literally 2 hours just trying to get this upper deck and anti-sway bar to fit the way it was supposed to because of the servo. So I needed to get some more servos, so I didn't buy normal servos. I just bought low profile ones, and I'm just going to start using them for all the builds. And if I run into an event where the low profile is kicking that steering arm too far in, or then I'll use a normal one. But I'm gonna go to using low profile servos and everything first, and then going to the standard ones, because the standard ones just seem to be domed a lot higher than they used to be. You figure the old ones, when this was designed, everything was analog. Right now everything's digital. So yeah, chassis done. You know, obviously with it being brand new, you know, it looks great. I checked my 2S battery, and it fits in there perfect. Like I said, we have the pink motor mounted already, and now we have a servo in there that works. So on part 2, we'll get the body cut out. We'll get it painted. There's 3 different colors. There's PS15, which is metallic red. Might even be bright metallic red, but it's a metallic red. And the PS6 yellow, and then PS5 black. And there might even be PS12 silver for the bars. So 4 different colors, I believe, on the car. And then we'll get the wheels and tires put on. I've got them sitting right here. So we'll get the wheels and tires put together. We'll get some tire writing done. I'm going to do the tire writing in silver to match the bars. I think that'll look cool, and to match the wheels. So yeah, we'll finish the electrics in the next video. We'll get the wheels and tires done. We'll get the tire writing done. We'll get the body cut out and painted. We'll get it decaled, and we'll fire up the car. And then part 3 will actually be a running video. I don't want to destroy this truck, but I want to show this truck. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tape the hell out of the bottom with some blue painter's tape, and just hope for the best. We're probably going to take it to like a baseball field, because or there's a track that's local. I might see if they'll let me film there. I'm building a track in my yard, but I haven't had the time yet to start it. So I don't know if I'll get it done this filming season or not, but there is a track at my local hobby store that I think, if I give them some shout outs, I think, because they have 5 different online stores, and you've all probably bought from them not knowing it. So I think that they'll let me film on that track some clips here and there, just to show you some of these cars running, because I want to show the Optima Mid Custom Special 2 that I just finished building. So maybe we'll take a couple cars over there and see how they feel about letting me film. So yeah, if you like the video, please comment. If you've had a Dynablaster, let me know how it runs. If you haven't had a Dynablaster, what do you think of it? I tried to be as detailed in the build as possible, showing you all the steps and kind of as it's going together. I thought it was epic. I think it's going to be an epic car, and I'm looking forward to finishing it up and getting it running. So if you haven't already subscribed and turned your notifications on, make sure you do so you don't miss part 2 and part 3 where we finish it and get it running. And I just want to thank you all for supporting the channel. If you've already subscribed and you're liking and you're part of the comments every week, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. For me, it's not about the numbers as much as it is about the content in the comments. So so far I'm loving it, and I thank you for all your support. And until we see you again with part 2 of the Dynablaster, we'll see you soon. Thanks.